Once again, I've taken the host chair away from Renee, although she didn't really put up a fight. I think you like seeing me do this and mess up the intros. Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm bestselling author Barb Wallace. I'm here with my sisters from another mister, New York Times bestselling author Donna Allworth, and Renee Ryan, author of The Widows of Champagne and the upcoming Secret Society of Salzburg out this December. Tonight we're doing, it's by popular, I'm going to probably move back up so I'm the same size as you. Tonight we're doing,
sure, I can move in.
Tonight we're doing a special request. Someone had asked that we talk about our favorite writing books and our favorite craft books and do a craft thing. So if you're a writer, or if you're thinking about writing, or you're just kind of curious about listening to a bunch of people geek about books, this is the discussion for you. So I'm going to start with Renee. What are your top 3 writing or craft books?
Okay. Well, as I discovered last time that we had a craft corner, the other 2 had, they had visuals and all of that. So now I don't have visuals. I didn't make visuals, but I do have the actual books because I am still old school. I love the actual book. I don't like the Kindle. I have the actual book. So my number 1 book that revolutionized how I wrote stories, how I understood stories, how I really, in my process of being, well, let me step back a bit because I think we should all tell our story of how we became published authors, because I know most people are pretty interested in that, right? I mean, that's one of the first questions we get asked is, and so my route to publication was not an easy one. I think I had 187 rejections before I finally sold my first book. And one of the things that I learned was I joined Romance Writers of America. I was trying to write romance, and I entered contest after contest, and I would win, or I'd get second, or I'd get third, but I could not make that final step to publication. So one day I took all of my rejection letters, all of my contest entries, and I tried to figure out what I wasn't doing. And I discovered that I had some issues with how to basically plot a story. And that seems simple, but it's not. I mean, I was a storyteller, but I didn't know how to organize the story. So my favorite book, because this just revolutionized how I looked at story. I'm not a 3-act structure person. The hero's journey made me crazy, but it's called GMC. And let's see if you can see it. It's called Goal, Motivation, and Conflict by the incomparable Deborah Dixon. And it is, be confident your idea will work before you write 500 pages, how to use key elements to give dimension to your characters and direction to your plot. And if you look, Goal, Motivation, and Conflict is really about character. Even though they said I didn't have any, I had issues with plot, really it's character, because every character needs a goal, they need to be motivated, and they need conflict. And the greatest part about this book is that I was trying to write romance, but she uses the Wizard of Oz as her example. So this book is amazing, and it's amazing, and it helped me change. It changed how I looked at things. It's called The Building Blocks of Fiction, not romance. And so I think it's every single person that is struggling with how to put together a great story. This is the first stop. And after that, everything just sort of opened up for me. So this would be my number 1 book. So that's my first book. My second book is Story Genius by Lisa Cron. And this one, again, is, it does not follow, it is, again, if you're noticing, I'm not bringing this whole 3-act structure, the hero's journey. I don't outline, I don't organize story by plot. And this is all about the science behind why we tell stories, why we need story. And as I was rereading it, starting my next book that I'm deep into the pages now, it's also based on character, and it's also based on the building tools to a character and how you build a better character and a better story starting with character. So that's number 2. And then the final one, and I went back and forth with this, and I'm really torn, and I'm still not sure which one I'm pulling up. So
We
All right,
can
I'm going with this
you
one.
can have an honorable mention.
yeah.
Self-editing for the fiction writers. Self-editing. Have either one of y'all read this book?
Is that
No, I read
Dave
enough.
King, Rennie Brown?
Rennie Brown and Dave King.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
I
have
did
it.
not. I
And-
read a different revision book, but I haven't read that one.
And this book is one of those books, as a writer, that I discovered is a book that you don't ever want to even open up until after you've written your first novel and that you have your first draft done. Because this is all about how to really clean up your words, how to clean up your fiction, how to just write riveting prose. So it's basically how, and if you don't know how to tell a story, this will not be helpful. This will not help you get published. This will basically just confuse you. However, it was another one that was very revolutionary to me, but it came at the right time in my career. And I think I even discovered it after I published. So that would be the third one. Honorable mention, did we say? Do I get a
honorable mention?
And this one, Barb, you're the one that told me about it. What about the baby?
I love that book.
Alice McDermott.
I'm half through it.
I love that book.
This is my new one. This is the one that is, and actually some thoughts on the art of fiction. But the whole point, what about the baby? And this is why I think if you're not a writer, you should read it. It'll help you enjoy fiction better. I think it'll help you enjoy movies better, because in that first scene, she's sitting there talking about this great story and it was not so great and all of this, and she's reading it. And then finally she goes, well, whatever happened to that baby that had been mentioned way at the beginning? Isn't that it?
No, it's, the movie Julia. We've referenced this before, where she there's a scene with a woman left with her baby, and that's like all people wanted to know about.
What happened to that baby? Whatever happened to the baby? And the whole movie wasn't even that great. And she said, so that's what the story was. It should have been about, was that whatever happened to the baby. So anyway, those are mine. And like I said, I really struggled between for this one and this one as being my number one, my number three. And
What About the Baby just came out in either August or October. It's really, really new. But it's very, very good.
Yes, because it's 2021. So you're right. And like I said, it's like that gem that I just discovered. And I know Donna is going to, and the only reason I didn't add the one that Donna is about to talk about is because I knew she was going to talk about it. And it's another one that, What About the Baby, that's just, to me, maybe it's just where I am in my writing journey, that is just really resonating, the life of a writer and the life of a creative versus how to put a story together. So that's where I am.
Since you mentioned Donna, we'll segue right into you.
All right. So my first one is Big Magic by Liz Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. But this is
City of Girls. We all know how I feel about that.
Totally about life as a creative. And I got to tell you, like, is this the one that I highlighted in? Yes. So, like, if you look in this, I don't know if you can see or not, but like I have whole passages that are highlighted in pink. And then, like there were just so many quotables that I could grab that just, it just, I don't know. It's when you get, after you've been sort of in this business for a while, sometimes you get a little cynical and a little jaded, or you get caught up in the business of it, or you get caught up in deadlines. And reading this just reminds you like how much storytelling is deep down in your soul. So that's definitely my number one. I have another copy that's signed because I met her a few years ago, which was like a bucket list thing for me, and did a workshop with her, which was very cool. So Big Magic is my first one. If you don't have to be a writer, if you have any sort of a creative bone in your body, or music or art or whatever it is, nature, whatever it is, it's so much of it is about that wonder. So, and finding the magic. So highly recommend. My second one is completely different. Oh, I didn't talk about my publishing journey either. I didn't read very many books when I was unpublished. I mean, I read books, but I mean, I didn't read a lot of books on craft. I did some workshops, I did some articles, and mostly I just wrote. I tried to get Goal, Motivation, and Conflict, and I could not find a copy for love or money. So I found it very difficult to find. So I still have never read it. But I find that I actually need the books more now than I did then. However, and I don't have a physical copy because I read the e-copy. But Shirley Jump just put out a book called Writing Compelling Fiction. And when I finished it, I was like, well, dang, I wish I'd had this book 15 years ago. Because just the way that she explains things and lays it out, I found it really accessible. It made sense with how my brain works, which is a huge, like, that doesn't happen often. So I highly recommend Shirley's Writing Compelling Fiction. We'll put a link, I think, in the comments after. And then my third one is a complete departure, and it's Grammar Girls, Quick and Dirty Tips for Better Writing. And if you've ever tried to read Strunk and White or the Chicago Manual of Style, you will appreciate Grammar Girl. And you can look her up on the web and stuff because she has, like, you'll find, if you just Google Grammar Girl, you'll get a whole bunch of hits. This, I actually gave a copy to my kid when they were teaching grammar as a TA. Because it just lays things out in a not boring and very understandable way. And there are a lot of things that we think we know about grammar, but they're like just little things. And so I actually used it when I was starting to edit and starting to copy edit for people. And I use CMOS and everything, but like I read this cover to cover, and it's just such a great little resource. So if you're looking to bone up on your grammar skills, highly, highly, highly recommend, because it's just so accessible and fun. Like, I forget what she calls. She has, like, when she uses examples. Oh, it's always squiggly and aardvark. I mean, it's a little bit quirky, right? So.
And you like that?
Quirky? I don't know. Yes. So anyway, my journey in publication was like a long time. It was 5 years and 10 manuscripts and a lot of writing. And I would agree, Renee, when you said that like so much was character and like you had a hard time plotting, but going back to character helped you with that. And I always tell other like new writers that the reason that is because characters drive your plot. So and it's their decisions that make the next plot point. So if they're not well motivated, then your plot's not going to be as effective. So 100% agree that it all comes down to character. All right, Barb.
Okay. So I've got you guys all beat with the publishing route. I finished my first book and started submitting it to agents the week before my son was born. And I got the call from Harlequin a day after his 15th birthday. So now in between there was, starts and bits and starts. I was very stubborn. I did not really know how to, I thought I knew how to write a book, and I was stubborn and convinced I did. And then I sat down maybe 7 to 10 years into the journey and said, I really need to learn how to write a book. So then I did. Then I finaled in a couple national contests, would put me in front of editors. And that's when I started getting feedback that was really useful. My biggest problem is I have a very strong voice, in romance anyways. And it was very hard to find they were rejecting it, going, we can't really figure out why we rejected it. So like, even they worked with me. So anyways, I probably had the longest, but then I'm the oldest. So, okay.
No, I think I'm older than you. I'm older than you.
Oh, okay. I don't think so.
I'm younger than all y'all.
Yeah. So my three favorite
This is
books.
true.
My three favorite books are, the first one is The Power of Point of View by Alicia Rasley.
Oh, she's great.
It's a great book. And yeah, I didn't find this until a few years ago. I'd probably written, by that point, published maybe 10 books when I found this. She really explains point of view and deep point of view in a way that makes sense about the whole camera and focusing in. And so many manuscripts I've read, deep point of view, they think it's just putting it in italics and going, oh, well, tough one, Barb. That you should not go up those stairs.
No.
And she explains how it all works and how to use it and how to pull in and out to make a scene stronger. And I thought it was one of the best books I ever read. So I really loved it. And then
my poor book budget.
So then the other book that I like, and you can tell because it's got.
I had that one. I like that one
Creating
too.
Character Arcs by K.M. Weiling. K.M. Weiling.
Either.
I also subscribe to her emails because she really is, her knowledge of craft is really, really something.
Mm-hmm.
What I liked about this book, I will say, this is not a book to read until you've actually written the manuscript. Again, she talks about I'm not like Renee. I love the 3-act structure. I am very married to the 3-act structure in the midpoints and all that. But what she talks about is how to marry character arc with the structure. So the reason I have all these yellow stickies is so that you know, like, what questions that need answering at this stage in the story. What questions does your character need to be addressing at this stage of the story? Which I thought would be great for revisions. It's terrific when you go through to make sure you hit all the right buttons, because the stronger the arc is, the stronger the story is. At least in my view, because I'm a big character-driven book. So a character-driven book person. You're making a face, Donna.
I am. It's because I'm a pantser.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why. That's a lot of people are pantsers, which is why they need to. This is not something you read and plot your book with.
Yeah.
It's totally. A revision.
It kind of gave me a bit of anxiety. Just think of.
I tried to plot my book with it, and then I realized that that's not going to work. So I marked all the pages that I needed for when I finish my next book, so I can go back and do it. And then my last one is not really a craft book, but it is a book that kind of changed the way I look at everything. It's called Around the Writer's Block: Using Brain Science to Solve Writer's Resistance.
So good.
By Roseanne Bain. It is really good. I am a psychology junkie. If you read my book reviews, you'll know that every once in a while I slide in some book about cognitive science because I just find that fun. This talks about how the brain works. Riveting. It is actually.
I agree. I'm a bit of a.
Well, this is great.
That's why this is so good.
Yeah, it's on my list to read. I haven't read that one. This is what we do. It talks about how the brain works and how resistance for writing works, because so much of what we think is writer's block isn't. It's fear, and it's from the fight or flight response. And she talks about how to approach it, where you need to have 3 components. You should have some process, product time, and self-care. And what changed it was we were all focused on word count, and I'm going to write 1,000 words. I'm going to do 1,500 words. And then you have days where you don't write that because you're writing or you're reading, or you got stuck up doing research and you only ended up with 500 words. So she's like, measure it on how you did your product time, because going down the rabbit hole of research, if it's important to that scene, is part of your writing time. So don't beat yourself up that you didn't get the words. She talked at RWA a few years ago, and it was really eye-opening. Oh, and I got to meet her, and we geeked out about cognitive science together. Jean Dixon just wrote, "Oh my God, I'm going to have a huge Amazon box." Well, right? More, because I'm going to give my honorable mention, and that you guys will all agree with me. It's any book or workshop that Susan Meyer is giving. You need to pitch. She does actually have a book out. I cannot remember the name of it. Donna edited it, so she should, but I don't. But Susan Meyer, M-E-I-R.
Way to put me on the spot.
Susan is one of the, along with Shirley Jump, Susan is one of the best writing instructors out there.
She's so common sense.
She is. And she teaches common sense. She learned to teach. She learned craft so that she could learn how to write a book. And she learned it in a way that's so understandable. And one of her workshops was called "Can This Manuscript Be Saved?" which I think she's going to turn into a book. That was the workshop that helped me finally sell.
Crack the Code.
Crack the Code by Susan Myers. So everyone, Crack the Code. That's my honorable mention.
Yeah,
she was fantastic. And
I kind of think of like her and Shirley. They've both written so many books, and they both have such a great, down to earth, relatable style. With their how-to books that they're just they just make so much sense.
They do. And
I don't when I try to explain something like that, or if I try to give a workshop. So I really appreciate that in somebody else.
Yeah, she's a great teacher. So and she doesn't get enough credit. She and Shirley you're so known in the romance world, but not outside the romance world. And so if you write stuff that's not romance, they still will be able to teach you. And I think
and Susan in Crack the Code, Susan uses a lot of she uses some of her own examples, but then like both Susan and Shirley will use like movies. They're a great way to look at character arc and turning points and stuff. So
now, interestingly, none of us picked some of the bigger book names.
No,
we talked about this when we were giving our samples. None of us picked Bird by Bird or Writing Down the Bones,
but we talked about them.
Stephen King's On Writing, The Hero's Journey. We've all read them. It's just funny that they weren't in our top 3.
Dwight Swain,
Robert McKee's Story.
Okay, so Stephen King, On Writing, Bird by Bird. Oh, you've got the McKee. Did you talk about
Robert McKee's Story?
Creating Characters by Dwight Swain?
Yep.
That was on my.
We all have these books.
Anything by Donald Moss?
Anything by Donald Moss?
So yes, which one was that? Renee?
Emotional Impact by Carl Iglesias.
Okay, Writing 21st Century Fiction by Donald Moss. It's really good.
Craft fiction. I also had that one.
Yep. But why weren't they in your top 3? What made the 3 that you picked stand out among all those? Because clearly we all have like 20 or 30 craft books sitting on our shelves. What made those 3 stand out?
I think for me, it was Big Magic has been huge for me, like on a personal level. So that was a no-brainer. I think with Shirley's, it's a new book. It just came out. And when I read it, I think I was just so struck by how, like, if I were starting out now, I would want that on my shelf. And even after writing like 70 books, I could still look at it and think of ways to apply what she was saying to my story to make it better. So it's great if you are a new author, but it's for everybody. And then I really like the grammar book because if I put my editor hat on, more people should read that. And so, but I do find it really accessible. And so, because I bought Strunk and White thinking I really should bone up on my grammar. And then I'm just like, I can't get through this. I'm going to fall asleep. And then someone said, have you tried Grammar Girl? And it's so good. So I think, and I wanted to pick books that were different. So, I could have done Big Magic and then On Writing and then Write Naked by Jen Probst. For me, those are all books about what it is to be a writer and sort of supporting your writer self. But I wanted to pick stuff that was different, like from different areas. So
yeah, I did too. I did the same thing and tried to, the Around the Writer's Block, I actually picked it up to reread it. So then I was like, well, clearly this is going on my list because
that was such a good book.
It's a very good book. And I'm actually this time going through and highlighting. I didn't the last time because I was afraid to disrupt it, but this time I'm highlighting it.
I highlight all the time.
I usually do, but this one I didn't. I think I was trying to keep it neat for some reason.
Well, I have to say that the reason that I picked GMC is because it was revolutionary for me. It just changed everything about how I told a story. I learned how to tell a story instinctually because I read a lot. And that was going to be the sort of the final thing I was going to say. I'll get to that in a second. But that was kind of why I chose GMC. And then, I just think that one of the hardest things as a published author for a traditional publishing house, and I think not everybody, knows the difference between an indie author and a published author, and I think they think once you sell a book to a publisher, that then you just say, well, now I'm just going to keep writing books. And that's not how the process works.
Yeah.
And my sister and I are very good friends. Like when I go to New York, we go to a show, we go to dinner. She and I are friends. However, in order for me to sell my next book, the next book that's coming out, or to go to contract, I have to write synopses, which are incredibly boring, beginning, middle, and end, 3-act structure, narrative. It's basically a narrative form summary of the book that I'm going to write. And then I have to write pages. And so one of the things that I was discovering, because I have we call them proposals, before we go to the final manuscript where I can actually write it, my publisher has to get the big 2, 3, 4, 18 thumbs up in the entire publishing house before we can, before I get paid for one, but before then I get the green light to finish the book. And I've had it where I turned in the entire proposal and she's like, no, I don't like it, start over. Oh wait, but it's still due the same regular time. And Donna's laughing because
we've all been there.
That's the published author's life. And so whenever I start a new book, you talked about the fear thing, the writer's block, I start to just completely forget everything that I know about storytelling. And so I have to start rereading some of the books that brought me there. Even though I've written almost 50 books, and I haven't published almost 50 books, but I've written that many books. And you think that but we forget. So that's part of the process for me, is that then I have to go back to craft. And there's very few authors that can do it instinctually, that didn't at some point have, had to learn how to write. Because I always tell, when somebody says, can anybody be a writer? And I would say, no. It's just like not everybody can be a singer. You either can carry a tune and hear the pitch, or you can't. And if you can carry a tune and hear the pitch, you can be trained to be a singer. A writer is either a storyteller or they're not. You can learn how to write, but you cannot learn how to be a storyteller. You cannot be. And so that's where, so anyone that's ever published a book is a storyteller, and they've had to learn how to be a writer. And so that's where I come from on that. And then the other thing is, some of the best education I have ever gotten in my career is by reading the greats. And when I say the greats, I mean authors that keep me up at night, books that I cannot stop reading, my go-to authors. We've talked about that before in the past. And I have studied their work to see, how are they putting sentences together? Why is this character so unlikable and I can't stop reading? Or why is this character really likable? Or why is this everything that I love about a book and I cannot get past page 2? And I just had that recently. And so I think that part of it, I don't know if that's taking it to the next level, but I am constantly studying story by reading other writers.
I think every writer is doing that.
What you said about having to go back and like review and relearn, because it seems like there's a book called The Creative Habit here, like craft books, The Creative Habit by Twyla Tharp. And she calls it polishing the clock face. And so it's basically, you start and you work on something, and then you work on something else, and you go around, and by the time you get back up to the 12 again, you have to start all over, and you just keep polishing the clock face. And I think we do that every time we start a new story. There's always something that each story teaches us, and things that we have to go back and polish again. So what about you, Barb?
Why I pick my books? Or
yeah.
I picked them for the same reason you did, that I wanted to get things that were kind of different. I mean, I read almost a lot of the books we talked about. There's some that I haven't. But like Gold Motivation and Conflict is what Jean Dixon mentioned. It's a good starter book. And Sue Slade made the comment that, she judges how the characters are developed. That's, I think, lacking in so many books. Because they get caught up in plot instead of what's their motivation. And I'm a big believer that you can sell any behavior if you give the character a good enough motivation.
Yep.
Yeah,
These are building blocks.
Right.
Building
And
blocks.
one of my favorite examples, I've used it in talks, is Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind does some pretty horrendous things, but you know why from the very start, why she's doing it, which is why you stay with her, even though she's a spoiled brat who steals her sister's
You look at any of the
murder and all these other things, but it's to save Tara because she's been taught that the land is everything. And when you know their motivation, you're willing to go along with it.
There's been so many, if you look at a trend on like HBO is what I'm going to like go with first. But then, you know, as TV kind of exploded with these series, think about how many have anti-heroes as the heroes. Like you think of like Sons of Anarchy. These are not,
Batman.
Like they're not, you know, squeaky clean. A lot of it isn't heroic behavior, but you know, we get invested in the characters anyway. Peaky Blinders. I mean, that's another one, right? So anyway, sorry, Barb, but that just made me so excited because the anti-hero thing has just been, it kind of bothers me in a way, but in another way, I get it. So.
We just got a note that she said, I watched Seven James's workshop given to, I guess that's the Faith, Hope, and Love chapter.
I just watched that. Is that Jean?
Yeah.
Hi, Jean. I just watched that this afternoon.
Is that the one about the 2-hour one about the structure?
Yes.
Okay.
So what does she have to say?
And yes, she's right. She's inventing Anna is because it's so fascinating. And in that case, you don't know her motivation because she's just a wingnut crazy, but she's so fascinating that you can get away with it. And yeah, I think that it's interesting that I know a lot of people. One of the things that you guys probably would agree with me. I know a lot of authors who are afraid to read craft books because it scares them to think about craft and then compare it to what they do know or don't know. And they start comparing themselves saying, oh, you know what? I don't have this. I don't have that. So they avoid craft books altogether, figuring if I keep my head in the sand, I'll just write and be fine. And, go ahead, Donna. You're the editor.
That's not the road to success.
No, it's not. I mean, I will be the first to agree. Nora Roberts says she never reads them because she might find out. And I will give Nora a pass because she makes $30 million a year.
And you know what? Nora paid her dues.
She
Nora
did.
paid her dues way back in the 80s when you know she started out, and that's fine. But I don't think you necessarily have to. But if you're avoiding them for that reason, then you're not really showing that you're looking to grow.
Right.
Well, and every profession has continuing education. Why would ours not have continuing education? Even you know, some of the greatest music, sopranos, opera, they take voice lessons, you know, and so I don't see why a writer would not want to continually hone their skills. And I don't know about you two, and you know, Jean and the others listening in, this is hard. It is hard putting a book together. I keep thinking I'm going to read one of these craft books and it's going to be the Hallelujah chorus is going to start. And suddenly this is going to be an easy gig for me.
The magic.
And and I haven't found it yet. And probably if I do, I'm telling nobody, but that's not true. I'll tell my close writer friends, but I keep, you know, there is that eternal hope that I will find that magic silver bullet.
Well, and so one of the commenters just said, the more I learn, the less I feel like the less I know. And that's, every writer says the same thing. And the more books they write, the more they feel they don't know. And I think that's a sign of, because you want to take your writing to the next level. If you're very
actually answering that comment.
If you're very content with what you're writing, then you're not going to feel that way. But if you always want to improve, then you're always going to feel like there's something missing that you need to know. And I think that's just a sign of wanting to grow.
You know,
you said, this woman said, maybe I get more insecure. And I'm like, well, no. Well, yes, because I'm the queen of insecurity. But I think it's insecurity born of a desire to be better.
You know, when we talk about our writing journeys, I remember, I think I'd written my 4th manuscript and it came back from my critique partner, and it was tough. And I get mad and I stomped out to the garage and said to Daryl, I was just not going to write anymore. And I was angry and And my critique partner, who just didn't put up with that crap, said, well, you can be angry or you can get published. It's your choice. And so I decided I would rather be published than be right. so there is an awful lot of, you have to check your ego at the door and
took me 10
just
years to do
willing
that.
to learn. And honestly, learning is the most beautiful thing. Like, it's just, it opens up every time you learn something new, it opens up something more. And I don't know why you would avoid that.
No, but I understand. I do understand it for exactly the same reason the commenter said. It can make you feel insecure. Like suddenly you realize, I don't know a lot. I'm not doing any of this. Oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think the other part of that is for some of us, I do things are very organic for me. I'm a horrible teacher for that reason.
Yes.
Yeah, no. And I admit it. I'm not a very good workshop giver because everything is very organic. And when you read these books and they break it down, my first instinct is to feel insecure. And then after I let it sit for a little while, I was like, well, actually, no, I do that. I just never.
Yeah, you do it instinctually.
Right.
Right. I would say the biggest blessing, and I don't know, I would say maybe because we all sort of published around the same time, our first published, and I would say I personally feel incredibly blessed that there was basically one option when I was trying to get published originally, and it was traditional publishing. Indie, they didn't even have e-readers, or maybe when I first sold, the e-reader was in its infancy. I don't think Amazon had access to it, and it just wasn't an option. And self-publishing was what? Vanity publishing, where you paid $1 million and then maybe sold 500 of your books out of the trunk of your car.
Yeah.
And so we had, and I remember, and it has stuck with me, and I still think of this, is that a lot of unpublished authors at the time, and I think still think, they were competing with unpublished authors. And I had always learned, and I think Barbara Samuel told me this, who is an amazing author. She said, no, you are competing with the published authors. You're competing for those slots. You are not competing with unpublished. You're competing for a published author slot. And that made me understand that I had to take my writing up a level. I couldn't just be a good unpublished author. I had to be as good, if not better, than a published author to get recognition and to get attention. Now, I've seen it. I've had friends that do it. They get a couple of rejections from a traditional house, or they decide this is too hard, and then they go indie. Maybe they're ready, because I do think that the gatekeepers did keep a lot of people out longer than they needed to be. But I also value those gatekeepers because it made me a much better writer. And it's made me also the kind of writer where I never rest on my laurels, because I know that there's always somebody behind me looking for that slot. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. I kind of think, like, when you get a rejection, if you're trying with traditional publishing, you have to look at why you're getting that rejection. And if the comment is, I really love this book, but it just really doesn't fit our publishing program, that's one thing. If you get comments that the characterization is lacking, that that's very story issue, then maybe it's not ready. So I do think there's a difference, and so and I've seen both. So I've seen both come across my desk, as with
an editor,
where someone's been, like, this really didn't fit here, and I'm like, but it's such a good story. And I honestly had a client who wrote this great story and went through like 6 rounds of revisions with a traditional publisher.
I think I know this client.
And they didn't take it. And I was just like, I don't get it, because, and she published with another publishing house in the meantime. And so she ended up indie publishing it because, and I still love that story. So, in that case, she was ready and they just kept jumping through hoops and getting nowhere. So that's a very different scenario. So, but if you get rejections where, you're really, Barb, do you remember, and Renee, you probably did too, because it seemed to be like the official lingo at the time, but you get a rejection back and it would say, your story lacks emotional punch. Did you ever get that one? Yeah.
I got that one.
I've got a revision letter a couple times too, but yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back because someone asked a question. Do either of you use Enneagram? I don't, so that's why. I don't know.
I used to. I now, because my deadlines are too tight for me to actually take any time on an Enneagram. I've got to start. I do characterization, and I used to. That was, Jean, that was also revolutionary for me, was to take the quiz as my characters. And then it does give you a lot of the emotional flaws, and it does really feed into, especially in romance, I felt. It does help you understand some of the emotional backstory of your characters.
Yeah.
Do you do it, Donna?
No,
Well, then you're a pantser, so.
I am, but I quite often do some character work first because, again, those are the building blocks, right? The GMC. So I generally do that. And it's funny, there's another book on writing romance that we didn't mention, and it's been out for quite a while, and it's Kate Walker's 12-Point Guide to Writing Romance. My favorite thing in that book is there's character worksheets. And so you can fill it out for your character. And it seems like some of the things are not important, but it's often the little things that aren't important that really shape the character. So like, what's their favorite possession and why? And then then that possession obviously has some history to it. And it goes back to their own, motivations and their own conflicts. So some of them can be really illuminating. And the funny thing is, I'll often fill them out and then I won't even look at them again. But it just gives me that touchstone at first to really sort of get into the head of my character. So I do that quite often. I haven't really done Enneagrams or like any of the personality type things. And I'm like you, Renee, I just, I don't want to say I'm too lazy to do it, but it's just not really my process. I'm more of a jump in. And I like to play discovery a little bit as I go along. So I generally have the basics out that I'll put into a proposal and then go from there.
Yeah, I was chuckling with Renee because I probably was the most spoiled writer in the world. My synopsis would be, she has a woman comes to London to babysit a millionaire cat.
Oh, see, and mine
would be like, okay, let's see this. Yeah, I literally would propose like a paragraph.
I did that with the romance line. I didn't get away with that at Western or at St. Martin's. I didn't get away with that.
No, we were very spoiled writing for a London publisher. So
never. Even after 20 fucking books, my editor was still 50 pages, a detailed synopsis.
See, that would kill it for me. Kill the book for me.
The problem with a detailed synopsis is the more you give them, the more that they can tell you they don't want. And I write a synopsis and I never look at it again. So
Same.
But I will say, in my historical fiction novels, because there's so many moving parts, I actually do the synopsis and I do a storyboard, and I never did that before. And the storyboard is more sort of scene by scene what I know needs to happen. And I have to have it color coded, because when you're shifting timelines and when you're shifting point of views and you're trying to figure out who's going to do what, writing it chronologically that's how I do it. But without the storyboard, I would be so lost, and I would spend.
Yeah, I do it too.
And having only, having deadlines that are less than, they're like 6 months.
But you know what?
And I break it down in a 3-act structure because I love it.
Well,
because you're a 3-act structure girl. But you know what, Renee? When you do that though, like even if you plot it out on the storyboard and you have the timelines and stuff, if you're writing along and you're a pantser and you get to a point and you're like, oh, that's not going to work, you don't have to be married to that. You can you can change the scene, you can do whatever and change it. Just being aware that, you know, it still has to fit within this actual timeline.
And that's why Postits work, because you can rip them off and move them around. And that saved me a lot in my last book, because I had 2 points of view and 2 timelines, and yeah, it got really confusing for a while. No, 3 points of view and 2 timelines, and so yeah.
We have a book recommendation: Anatomy of a Premise Line by Jeff Lyons. I have never read that.
Ooh.
I am now going to go look into it.
Oh, that reminds me of one of my favorite Rejection Letters. Was I really loved the premise, but the story. Wait, what was it? I really loved the premise, but I wasn't. And there's something, it was one of those catchphrases. It's one of those catchphrases where I didn't fall in love with the story. And I was like, you love the premise, but you didn't fall in love with the story. So, or I didn't fall in love with the writing, something along those lines.
It's a great idea, poorly executed. Thanks.
Right. Right. Well, and then, but I've had friends that would say, yeah, great idea. Crap, execution. But I've had friends who will say, I'm getting great rejection letters. And I would read that and going, no, that's like, you want me to give you the real code? You know, you want me to decode this for you?
Yeah. So we could geek out on this all night. It's 46 minutes in. So I'm gonna call the game. Because we could go crazy all night. But before we go, I got a couple things. One is that Step in the Story is a community forum. It is not one-way communication where we just tell you a whole bunch of stuff. We want you guys to chat too. So if you are doing reading and you come across a really cool story that's historical story that you want to tell us, or you read a book that you're like, oh my God, this book is amazing, post it. You guys are, this is a community where we're supposed to be chatting, not just us talking to you. We want to hear from you guys too and talk with you. And then the other thing is we've got some cool things coming up in April, which I'm going to pass to Donna, because Donna's taking the hosting chair away from me. And
and Renee is not.
And I had a trial run tonight working the tech, and it worked. So
tell us what's coming up in April.
April 12th at 7:30 instead of 7 o'clock Eastern, to accommodate our lovely guest, who is Sarah Phelan, known as the Bookish Knitter. She's going to be with us, and we are talking about The Exiles by Christine Baker Klein.
Can't wait to dig into that one.
Right.
I just started it. It's great. I
know my light is making like a massive glare on the cover, but it's called The Exiles, and it's set in Australia. So it's something a little different for us, which I'm excited about. And then on the 26th of April, and the time is still to be determined as Genevieve is in the process of moving to Alberta. I'm going to be doing a short interview with Genevieve Graham about her new release called Bluebird, which
has been hitting a lot of lists as a book to read.
Yeah, it's and it's out on April 5th, I think. So we're going to have a chat.
I got to read an arc of it, and Donna did too. It's about Prohibition, World War I through Prohibition.
Yep, and set in like Windsor/Detroit. So it's on the Canadian line, but it's a lot of the rum running that happened between Windsor and Detroit. And
very different setting, very different kind of
It's if you read the author's notes, she talks about liking Peaky Blinders, and I really got that sense with
it's just like goes, what do you mean she's moving?
I know. What do you mean she just moved to Halifax? She lived in Musquodoboit for ages.
There we go.
Anyway,
yes, we're personal chatters here,
right? Well, I'm going to see Sue tomorrow night, because tomorrow night's our book club. So, but yes, Sue, she is moving to Alberta.
And then we have some really cool stuff coming up in May. We're going to tackle Piper Hughley's book, By Her Own Design. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And it's about Anlo.
It's about the a Black fashion designer who became the designer for Jackie Kennedy's wedding gown.
Yeah. And what else are we doing in May, Barb?
Oh, we're going to have a special live broadcast, because the three of us will be in Florida. And I think that's what we're going to do. Weird history, fact, or fiction. We're going to quiz people.
Oh, Lord.
If you guys play along.
There will be, if we're doing weird history, fact, and fiction stuff, then there will be wine.
There'll be wine.
Okay.
And Yes, because apparently it fell on mine that I'm supposed to be doing something fun. So we're going to try. You guys can play along, and we're going to decide if the story is really true or not.
Oh my. Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. So as we're closing down, I'm going to take over for a few minutes, and I'm just going to ask everybody, what are we reading right now? What are you reading right now, Donna?
Oh, hang on. I got it right here. Like literally, I just started it last night, and I'm in love with the writing. It's called The Paris Secret by Natasha Lester.
What a cover. That's a beautiful cover.
Yeah, I've never read her before. So I found it the other day in a store on discount, and I couldn't resist. And I started it, and I really do just love the writing. Oh, Barb, you have a visitor.
Where's my kitty?
You have a kitty.
Yeah, so that's what I'm reading. It's The Paris Secret.
Okay.
I just finished Bluebird like 3 days ago. And I'm debating what the next one is. Part of me wants to read. I have a stack of like 9 books behind me. So naturally I want to read the new one that I bought on Monday, which is a nonfiction book called Madam. It's a story of Polly Adler from the Jazz Age.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah. So I'm thinking I want to read that, or I will pick up Diamond Die. I also have that.
Oh, fun.
You have an early copy? I have to wait another week.
I do have an early copy of Diamond Die.
That's Kate Quinn's book?
Kate Quinn's book. So I'm torn.
Yeah, it's out on the 29th.
And I have to read The Exiles, but I really do want to read the Diamond Die. Kate Quinn's auto buy for me.
Yeah, same.
Yep. So I just started The Exiles, and I'm riveted, so I can't wait to keep reading it. But I just finished the Mozart Code by Rachel McMillan. And that one it's a little different setting. It's set in Vienna, Austria, and Prague after World War II, during the Cold War, and Austria was divided into 4 sections, and there was just a lot of espionage going on. And the Mozart Code is about has some artifacts. It's got mystery. It's got intrigue. It has romance. It's just kind of one of those kitchen sinky books, but she does a really good job of pulling all the threads together. And so it doesn't feel like a kitchen sinky book, but there's a lot going on, and she does a really good job. And the historical research is impeccable. I'm just amazed at how well she did. And so anyway, that only came out. It's only been out a week, maybe.
Yeah.
Called The Mozart Code. Gorgeous cover. I wish I had it sitting here. I brought it upstairs, and whoops. Okay.
I'm reading a lot on my Kindle, so I don't have a lot of the books to hand.
Most of mine are on the Kindle. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then what are you writing? And then we're going to say goodnight. So what are you working on right now, Barb? Tell me about your book.
Working on the same book. It hasn't really changed much. It's an historical fiction. I like to call it The City of Girls meets The Silver Factory. And it's it is about a group of people who become like the in crowd in 1964, and it's their rise and fall. And the central character is the 2 remaining surviving people are telling the story of the it girl of 1965 and how she crashed.
Okay. Nice.
It's very cautionary about fame and finding out who you are.
So a little bit of, okay. So it sounds like that's going to be a good one. And I love that you set it in a different kind of time period. So it's not another World War II Cold War book. It's or jazzy then.
No, it's much more just right after it's 1964 is right before the 60s that we know, but right after the Beats. So it was kind of a middling, not beat, not hippie. They were right in the middle.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right, Donna. What you working on?
Working on the World War I book. About time, right?
With the Halifax Explosion, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So Halifax Explosion, 2 points of view, 2 women, and whose lives are very turned upside down by the explosion. And then months down the road, their lives are going to intersect in a way that is a bit surprising and and a bit devastating. So I'm really like so excited to be working on it. Like, so I'm pretty happy to be. But the thing was, when I actually had it as a dual timeline. So what I'm actually doing right now is peeling all of the more present day timeline out, as it's not working. So I'm going to pull it all out, but I'm going to put it in a file on its own, because that story may live for another day in a different way. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. So my word count's going to be cut in about half, and then I'll just go from there and keep building on it. So
sometimes that's what you have to do, and then it'll fly. It'll just sing from there on.
Yeah. It's funny. One time I was writing for Harlequin Romance, and I was working on a book, and Birgit Davis Todd was here doing a workshop, and she was one of the editorial directors, I think, at Harlequin in Toronto at the time. And after the workshop was over, we were sitting at the bar having a chat, and I was telling her about really struggling with this book. And I said, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, just relax. It'll come to you. Don't be afraid to make changes, and just sort of gave me some confidence. And as I was driving home, I was like, oh, I know. The father needs to die. But it was totally the right thing to do. So I went home, and it was due in a week. And I pulled out 4,000 words and then restarted from like that point. And I did kill off the father. But once I did that, it opened the story right up, and I did finish it on time. So sometimes you just have to be unafraid to make those cuts.
Yeah.
Scary as it is.
Well, it's been exciting. Thank you. And Barb, any last words of wisdom as we leave after our craft journey?
My words of wisdom would be read, because actually more than craft books, or Renee said it before, I learned more from reading books by other people who know how to do it than that. I mean, I learned from craft, but I really learned more from dissecting what other people did who know how to do it better. I can learn more from reading a Beatrice Williams book sometimes than.
Oh my Lord! If you can get past the writer envy,
right? But if you got writer envy, that's a book to study. So,
right,
exactly. That is so true. Okay, well, thanks everybody.
Thanks, everyone. We will see
you, Sue, and all of our viewers. So good to see everybody. Thank you for joining us.
I really didn't think we were going to fill an hour. Silly me.
We'll see you all in April.
Bye, everybody.